Tonight, Trump's grievances.
This guy's calling himself God. God.
Yeah.
Thou shalt not have strange God. Yeah. And if he can get away with that, then he is truly a cult.
Trump gives Democrats an excuse to ignore the most important story of the weekend. Why you didn't hear about Jonathan Diller's widow.
He has always been a hero to Ryan and me.
Bill O'Reilly on why Trump keeps playing into Biden's strategy. Please leave.
Nueva York te da más. Chicago te da más.
A Denver city official tells migrants to leave his sanctuary city. What happens when all the sanctuary cities fill up?
Socialist governments traditionally do make a financial mess. They always run out of other people's money.
Comforting the enemy.
Allow more humanitarian assistance into Gaza. The president said no excuses.
How arguments about a humanitarian crisis in Gaza only help Hamas. Why American media has forgotten about the hostages. And don't say obese.
One study found that obesity rates for adults actually rose in 28 states this year.
Or lots of other bad words. The new language of medicine. Does it make us healthier or just feel better? Welcome to the fairest show on television. First tonight, Donald Trump keeps giving Democrats what they want. It's confusing, really, because it keeps happening over and over and over again. Think about this weekend. It was Easter. President Biden still has not said the name of slain NYPD officer Jonathan Diller. Over the weekend, NYPD honored Diller in the only way they can. And his widow all but blamed Democrats for her husband's murder.
It's been 2 years and 2 months since Detective Rivera and Detective Mora made the ultimate sacrifice, just like my husband, Jonathan Diller. Dominique Rivera stood in front of all the elected officials present today pleading for change. That change never came, and now my son will grow up without his father. I will grow old without my husband, and his parents have to say goodbye to their child.
Remarkably strong woman. Diller was murdered by a career criminal. Trump visited the family. His widow gave a gut-wrenching eulogy. That should have been the story all weekend. Yet Trump can't take the win. Rather than celebrate Easter like a normal politician, he compared himself to Jesus and went scorched earth on social media. Happy Easter to all, including crooked and corrupt prosecutors and judges that are doing everything possible to interfere with the presidential election of 2024 and put me in prison, including those many people that I completely and totally despise because they want to destroy America. One of many, many social media posts. Yes, some of Trump's grievances have legitimacy, fine. But Democrats and their media friends will use any opportunity to talk about Trump being a threat to democracy and a dictator. And he keeps giving them that excuse over and over and over again. Bill O'Reilly's here, host of the No Spin News, author of the coming book, Confronting the President's No Spin Assessments from Washington to Biden. Bill, it is good to see you. Happy Easter to you and yours. I want to get to the funeral in a minute that I know you were at, and it was an important moment. I'm glad you went. Donald Trump at this point is almost reminding me of that old Israeli saying about the Palestinians that he never misses an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
It is perplexing. I think that the former president is not able to control himself as far as his frustrations are concerned. He's got to lash out because he feels that he's being treated so unfairly. But you're correct in the analysis that it doesn't advance his cause to put himself in a position where the press that hates him, which is 90% of it, can use his words to obscure very important stories, like the assassination of the New York City police officer by a man who had 21 arrests and was out on the street. That is a huge story for America. Yet the New York Times put it on page 21. Newsday, the newspaper of Long Island, downplayed it, didn't use the widow's remarks that NewsNation just used. because they know they can't defend this policy of no bail, of permissive criminal justice behavior. And they can't defend the Biden administration either. It's an abject failure. So they pivot to Trump all the time to obscure the reality of what we're experiencing in America. Apparently, Donald Trump doesn't understand that or doesn't care.
You talked about the fury of being treated unfairly. And look, there's a lot to that when someone's treating you unfairly, as I think people can reasonably agree Donald Trump is treated in the press. There's anger that comes of that, although is that more important to him? And I'm wondering if you think sort of the why it's more important to him than winning.
I don't know. I can't get into, when I speak to Donald Trump, and I haven't for a while, he's lucid. And when we discuss whatever issue he wants to discuss, because I don't bring any agenda into conversations with him, he calls me and if he asks my opinion, I give it to him. But he doesn't seem to be able to ignore things that he should ignore. And he's hurting himself. There's no question he is. The ultimate revenge for Donald Trump is winning the election in November. And he should do everything he can to try to make that happen. But instead, he goes off into tangents that hurt his party and hurt him. He should be up by 20 points, Leland. Every journalist knows that. The Biden administration is a disaster. You can debate that all day long, but the facts are the facts. Just the open border alone and the 20% rise in prices for the essentials of life, just those two issues, should disqualify Joe Biden from any consideration for anybody's vote. Yet the hatred of Donald Trump is at this point overriding that.
Are we now, and maybe this explains the divide, right? Michigan's tied, Pennsylvania's tied, Wisconsin, Trump up one. You were the original culture warrior. You're the original one who figured out sort of the Andrew Breitbart saying that politics was downstream of culture. And if you dealt with the culture in America, then you figured out the politics from there. Are we now entering a post-culture war period because politicians no longer have to talk about the issues? They can just fight with each other, as we're seeing?
It gets complicated. I wrote the book Culture Warrior back in 2002, I believe it was. And back then, it was an even fight. Now the progressive movement in states like New York, California, Illinois, and others have seized almost total power and are imposing policies that are getting people killed. Joe Biden is 100% beholden to the progressive movement. He does everything they tell him to do, everything. So the progressives have really rocketed in their ability to get things done, whereas the traditional side hasn't. It hasn't lost people. The progressives aren't pulling from conservative traditionals, but they have not had a charismatic leader. And Donald Trump is not a culture warrior guy. He's not.
He's not?
He's basically he's a deal maker. And that is why he governed fairly successfully, because he made deal after deal after deal after deal, most of which helped the American people in the economic range and overseas. But Trump doesn't care about abortion. I think he cares about violent crime. I do believe that. But does he know the genesis of the no bail law? Does anybody know? I know. Do you know what this is all about, really?
No, I think your point's well made. I would probably argue that Donald Trump's also a little bit of an entertainer, right? He's figured out, or at least he had in 2016, sort of the lightning rod issues that mattered, right? He was the first person to pick up on the immigration issue and figure out if I talked about building a wall, that was something people understood. The issue, though, is that one of the things he can't sort of forget, right, is January 6th. And for some reason, this is an issue he keeps going back to over and over and over again. Take a listen.
My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. This is the moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies Here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win.
All right, so that was Biden January 6th, and we also had Trump talking about the January 6th hostages. Neither side can give up talking about this issue that when you look at the polls, nobody in America cares about. My question is this. The first politician who stops talking about January 6th and starts talking about the future, aren't they the one who has a better chance?
I think it's a huge mistake for Donald Trump to keep relitigating the 2020 election and keep bringing up January 6th, because he has an opportunity to be completely exonerated. The case that the special prosecutor Smith is bringing against Donald Trump is very weak. He's charging Trump with conspiracy. All right? That means intent. In order to be convicted of a conspiracy, you have to have intent. And Smith somehow believes that he's going to show that Donald Trump wanted the riot at the Capitol to happen and encouraged it to happen. Well, there is so much exculpatory evidence against that. The National Guard, memos, testimony, even from the Secret Service, that if that's what Smith is bringing in, he's going to lose, and Trump will be acquitted. And that would exonerate him rather than over and over and over again. But my point before you asked me the question about January 6th is Donald Trump does not know the origins of why America is under siege by the progressive movement. He's not delving into it. He knows most Americans don't want 10 million foreign nationals in here unsupervised. He knows most Americans don't want 31-year-old police officers gunned down in the street by a guy who has been arrested 21 times. He knows that, but he doesn't know why it's happening. And there doesn't seem to be anyone around him to be able to school him on that. And I think that's very important. The basis of no bail, not punishing violent criminals, is race. The progressives believe that the justice system in this country is bigoted against African Americans. They want to blow it up the same way they want to blow up the economy, because most of the progressives are socialists. They don't believe in capitalism. Okay? Yeah. So they want to get as many foreign nationals in here as possible, don't understand the difference between capitalism and socialism, but they do understand entitlements given to them by Democrats primarily. So that's what it's all about. And if Trump would just learn this and stop with the issue, you're absolutely right. Americans don't like January 6th. It was appalling to most Americans. But they want to know if the economy is going to improve, prices are coming down, if the border is going to be secure once again, or if we're going to go to war with Putin or China. That's what they want. Yet Trump obsesses about certain things. And there's nothing anybody can do about it.
You know, Bill, I've never had anybody be so emphatic on this program telling me that I'm right. I appreciate it. Thank you. As always, we'll see you. We'll see you next week, and I would encourage everybody to go to BillO'Reilly.com for the column about the funeral.
Thank you very much, Leland. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. All right, we'll see you soon. Coming up next, uproar over the president's Trans Day of Visibility proclamation as we watch another trans high school student injure a actual girl on a basketball court. Are Democrats playing with fire in an election year? Plus, a candidate proving that age matters this election year. The college student who just beat an incumbent that is 60 years older. Is this from your dorm room at East Carolina?
Yeah, we're in the college department right now, so the quality of the video and the attire in the back fits that life.
There's a battle going on. It's a spiritual battle. There are people who want to de-Christianize this country, and very actively so. I think this was a very intentional insult. They can say all they want. Oh, it landed on the 31st, but just as Pete said, they could have moved it to the 1st. April Fool's Day probably would have been a more appropriate day.
That's some of the Fox News coverage of Trans Visibility Day. You have no doubt heard about the outrage. Yes, President Biden did declare March 31st Trans Visibility Day. The White House even tweeted on Easter about Trans Visibility Day. To be fair, though, it's kind of a fake scandal. Trans Visibility Day is March 31st every year, like it or not. So no, President Biden didn't try to rename Easter. But in an election year, when a sitting president should be tacking to the center, Democrats are doubling down on an issue dreadfully unpopular with suburban America.
To the many transgender students across the country listening on this Trans Day of Visibility, we in the Biden-Harris administration want you to know that we see you.
We honor the many contributions transgender Americans make in health, medicine, public service, and across our nation.
We celebrate the trans individuals in our communities and recognize their struggles for recognition and increasingly survival in the face of unfathomable hate.
Kurt Bardell, a NewsNation contributor, Scott Traynor, Director of Data Science at our Partners for Decision Desk HQ. Gentlemen, good to see both of you. Kurt, how did the transgender issue become the progressive left's and even Democrats' hill to die on?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to note that this is something that's been around for like 15 years.
Let's do away with whether it was on March 31st or not.
Okay. I don't actually understand why this is such a pronounced issue in Democratic politics, because, again, we're talking about something that affects such a small amount of people that I feel like it's outsized in the amount of energy and consumption that this
So
issue.
why does it get that? Do you understand?
Because Democrats cannot help themselves but to find every possible way to feel outrage and to express it.
Does it work politically?
Well, the polling is pretty clear on both sides. In the Democratic electorate, transgender issues, the larger DEI issues poll very well. They don't poll as well on the Republican side. So, look, that message played well to the Democrats, and it obviously gave Donald Trump and the Republicans something to complain about over Easter weekend.
Yeah, but if you think about, you think about suburban swing voters, which I think both of you would agree where this is happening. You point out this is, 1%, 2% of the population. Support for transgender athletes playing on teams matching chosen gender, i.e. boys playing on girls' sports teams. 2021, 55% of Democrats supported it. 2023, Kurt, that number's down to 47%. This is a losing issue even among Democrats.
I don't know a single parent in America who, A, is eager to have this conversation at home with their 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old child. B,
So this is when Joe Biden should be tacking to the center, right? This is when you don't create this as a big issue, and your political comm shop goes, hey guys, this is also Easter. Why don't we put something out on Saturday and call it a day?
I mean, I think this is one of those things where if you get...
As it is every year.
If you get specifically asked about it, sure, say, I believe in equality, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that it's something that you have to just ram down people's throats, honestly. I don't think there's a win there to be had.
Well, let's just look at the numbers. You put that graph up again, that's what we call a trend, right? 55 to 47, Republicans losing issue. If we were to break it out by independents, we would also see that decline. I mean, you just look at the trends. And again, when you look at the qualitative focus groups, even Democrats are like, look, I'm okay with it, but no, this is not a hill I'm going to die on. This is not something I'm pushing for.
That's exactly right. It is. They're okay with it. They don't want to talk about it or think about it all the damn time.
Except if you listen to the various parts of the Democratic Party, that's what they're talking about. I thought it was really interesting what the Secretary of Education had to say, because there was a long video, and part of his tweet was, not only do we see you, quote, we need you. Here is a little bit more.
We also know it's not an easy time to be you. Walking into a classroom should be an act of hope, not an act of bravery. That every day you choose to show up as your true self, you make this world a more brave, more honest, and more free place.
There's nothing more important to parents than education. This didn't work out well in 2001 for Democrats in Virginia. What is the plan here? Or let me just to sort of put a pin in it. Is this tacit admission by the White House and the political shop that the Biden administration's got a real problem with the progressive left not coalescing behind
That's
them?
exactly right. What they're afraid of isn't the backlash from the right or even the backlash from suburban parents. They're afraid that if they don't make an outwardly public acknowledgement, that there will be a backlash from their base, and that's why they did this.
All right. Gentlemen, good to see you. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Always fun. Denver once prided itself on being a sanctuary city. Now they have actually run out of money, and they are inviting everyone everyone to please leave.
We have received too many migrants, and that is why we ran out of resources. We are not going to block you if you want to stay here. I'm not going to block you. I'm here to let you know that your path is not over. If you stay here, you are going to suffer, and I do not want to see this.
Chicago te da más, entonces sugiero que vaya por allá, donde hasta también con un albergue de más largo plazo, también hay más oportunidades de trabajo por allá. Hemos recibido demasiados migrantes y por eso se acabaron los recursos. No, mira, no te vamos a bloquear. Si quieres permanecer aquí, no estoy aquí para bloquearte, estoy aquí para avisarte que tu camino no ha terminado. Si permanecen aquí, te vas a sufrir hasta más, y eso no lo quiero ver.
All right, that's the political director for the mayor of Denver telling a group of migrants to go to Chicago or New York. Denver, he said in Spanish, as you can hear, doesn't have room for them. The once celebrated city that celebrated their sanctuary status, like Denver, can't afford it. Massachusetts spending $75 million a month and wants citizens to take in illegal immigrants. New York's mayor says illegal immigrants will cost New York $12 billion. Chicago is spending $1.5 million per day that it does not have. Denver says it can only fund migrants for a few more weeks. Those are the ones in the cities that we know about. Denver says it has a massive budget problem. Sanctuary cities have literally run out of other people's money, something the late, great Margaret Thatcher once warned of.
Socialist governments traditionally do make a financial mess. They always run out of other people's money. It's quite a characteristic of them.
And the demand for other people's money continues to grow. Remember this video, a few hundred illegal aliens storming the border and pushing through the Texas National Guard troops? Most were rounded up and arrested. Upwards of 200 were charged with rioting. Today, a judge ordered several dozen released back into the United States. Texas reporter for the New York Post, Jenny Tare, is with us now. Do we know where these dozens that are released are going?
Yes, thankfully we've learned today that immigration and customs enforcement authorities took these individuals into their custody, which was a caveat to the judge's order. The judge said that they could be released on their own recognizance, and if ICE wanted to get them, they could, which was a pretty surprising move, but they weren't really allowing the state to pursue keeping them in custody. That wasn't going to happen with this judge's ruling, so they let ICE take them in. We still don't know about the others because this is just a portion of that 200 that you mentioned.
All right, so we've got the ICE picking up these folks. We've got ICE picking up the Venezuelan TikTok star who told everybody to squat in America and sort of made fun of the American dream, flashing around his $100 bills and saying take over people's houses. You've got now the Denver folks saying we're a sanctuary city, but we can't afford to help you out anymore. Is the word starting to head south of the border and back to the villages and towns that all these folks come from around the world? Things in America aren't quite as easy as they were. Getting to America is not quite as easy as it was 6 months ago?
I don't think that message is spreading. We see right now there's a caravan that's coming north from Mexico, about 2,000 individuals that are making their way to the United States. And we continue to see big groups cross into El Paso, just like the video that you've shown. We've seen a number of individuals take to the razor wire, cut the razor wire, then cross into openings, get pushed back by the soldiers there, cross into areas where there aren't Texas troops and things like that. So we are still seeing the migrant flows, and a lot of it is happening in states like Arizona and California, which I know you guys have documented this really well, because they're very afraid of those restrictions in Texas. But we still see in places like El Paso these big surges.
All right, so let's think about what happens once people get here, right? Because the border's a mess. We all know the border's a mess. But really where the immigration crisis, the border crisis, is happening is in every town in America. Denver, Chicago, New York, Boston, St. Louis. Every town and city in America is starting to deal with this, no matter how big or small. Jenny, is there a difference you're noticing, right, between the migrants who were coming across many years ago who all they wanted was to work? They just wanted a job and a better life. And that was a pretty convincing argument. And yet now when we see these mass groups in these big cities, Am I wrong to think that none of them really seem to talk that much about wanting a job?
Yeah, and one of the biggest shifts that I've observed is we see a lot more criminal elements coming across, and it's something that the other migrants will tell you about, especially the Venezuelans right now that cross. They tell you that there is a presence of the violent Venezuelan prison gang Transgender in some of the groups crossing, and we did see that in El Paso. We saw individuals from Venezuela in the streets of El Paso that had crossed illegally as gotaways, and they had the tattoos of El Transgender gang. And, you know, as we know, Jose Ibarra, his brother Diego Ibarra, both released by federal authorities, were part of that gang. And then we obviously know what happened after that. Unfortunately, the killing of Lake and Riley in Georgia. So we continue to see more bad actors try to seize on the openings in the border.
Jenny, you make a great point in terms of the difference of why people are coming to America and the difference in the argument from so many years ago about, hey, these are just a couple of folks wanting to come and try to work hard and live their American dream. It's very different both in terms of what people are asking for from the cities, from Denver and New York and Chicago, and then obviously the criminal element as well. Jenny, thank you. Keep up the great reporting.
Thank you.
All right. All right, some good news. There is hope for all of us who believe politicians should retire before they need dentures. In North Carolina, 21-year-old Wyatt Gable, a college junior, just edged out the 10-term incumbent there in the Republican primary for a state House seat. Gable is 21. The opponent he beat, George Cleveland, is 81 and has held that office since Gable was in diapers. Gable is with us now and joins. Is this from your dorm room at East Carolina?
Yeah, we're in the college apartment right now, so the quality of the video and the attire in the back fits that life. So
yeah, well there you go. From the college door, from the college apartment to the state house. Why'd you decide to run?
Simplest answer is because of COVID. Just sitting in my classes and going through school. My junior year at the end was taken away in high school. My whole senior year. Then my freshman year of college, and it was pretty apparent none of it was about safety. It was just all about control. So I just I remember reaching out to who would be my future opponent, never hearing anything back, and remember how that felt, and I don't want anyone to feel the same way I did.
All right, so you're going to run now in the general election. It's a Republican plus 15, 20-point seat, so you've got a good shot here. Isn't 21 a little young to be doing this?
Well, you think when our country was founded, our forefathers, they were my age and around there. So if they can do it, I can do it. And then the law says I can do it. And obviously, we look at what's in the White House. We got a lot of experience, and that hasn't really gotten us anywhere. So,
you know, I'm glad you brought that up. I would hesitate always comparing myself to any of the founders, but your point on age is well taken. I guess my question would be, I looked at some of your websites, some of the things you've said. So much of what you talk about are cultural issues, right? And these are things that you had a lot to say on. Are those really the biggest problems that are going to face your generation 20 or 30 years from now, what bathrooms people use, or is it going to be fiscal problems and policy questions, Social Security, Medicare?
I hope it's those things, because the social issues are the ones that don't really have much an effect on our daily life. They just kind of distract from the important things like our taxes, our gun rights, our crime rates, our immigration, all things like that. So I'm hoping we can get back to being what government should be, and that's, worrying about the people in the way of safety and financial responsibility, not trying to figure out if you're a man or a woman going into a certain bathroom. So
no, I get that, but that's a lot of the issues that you run on are those issues.
Oh, well, for right now, absolutely. In 20, 30 years, I don't know, but for right now, they definitely are.
I'm looking at your website now, protecting monuments and statues. I'm wondering why the social issues you view as so important to your generation. Are they a proxy for something?
No, you bring up the monument one, and a big thing I want to focus on is education. We've gotten away from the idea in our education system about teaching history and why America is what it is. We have people that want to tear down Civil War monuments, and eventually you do that, you're going to erase the history, so you're going to forget what happened in the past, and you're going to repeat it in the future. That's why it's so important to teach everyone the good, the bad, and everything, because we have flaws, but as a country, we are the best there is, and there's no denying that.
Fair enough. Hard to argue if you're going to teach everything. I'm thinking about where your future is. Pretty incredible, and I've read a lot about how hard you worked and door knocking and phone banking and everything else to win this primary, and taking on an incumbent is undoubtedly really difficult. Look, you only have to be 30 to run for North Carolina governor, 30 to run for U.S. Senate, 35 to run for president. You given any thought to your future?
Definitely. First and foremost, though, I got to win this seat. But, if everything goes well for me, I definitely want to continue to move up, because I don't want to become the thing I swore to destroy and end and be in the same seat for 50 years. I want to move on and, have that constant changeover in government like it's meant to be.
All right. Wyatt, thank you very much. Good luck. Your endeavors. We'll enjoy following you along the way. There's a long, long future ahead of you. Plus college graduation.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, plus college graduation. Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
What about the hostages? No, seriously. Why we keep hearing about the crisis in Gaza and nothing about those Hamas holds and rapes underground in Gaza? Mohammad Reza Zaidi, a member of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. The world is undoubtedly safer now that he is gone. Much of the American media isn't talking about the strike, just like they've stopped talking about the hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza. Take, for example, ABC News this week, which spent nearly 13 minutes covering the story to lead off their show, their premier Sunday news show. Just listen to how many times the word hostages came up versus the word humanitarian.
Viewing hostages on a hostage deal.
Return of all the hostages.
A humanitarian crisis. Humanitarian crisis.
Humanitarian assistance. For humanitarian assistance. International humanitarian law. Humanitarian assistance. Humanitarian aid. Humanitarian assistance. A humanitarian catastrophe. In the humanitarian disaster.
Videos of the rubble and refugees in Gaza are part of the reason we're seeing increased criticism of the Israeli military. But for some reason, we hardly hear about coverage like this. West Point grad John Spencer writes, Israel has created a new standard for urban warfare. Why will no one admit it? Major John Spencer is with us now, author of the book, Understanding Urban Warfare. It's good to see you, sir. Thank you. You write that there is this new standard the Israelis have set for urban warfare. And by new standard, you seem to indicate that it's a good one. 70,000 direct phone calls, 13 million text messages, 15 million pre-recorded voicemails giving civilians in Gaza advance warning. Why don't you think we ever hear about that in the coverage of what's happening in Gaza?
Because I think the world has fallen victim to disinformation and not having a reality of what the challenges are in dense urban combat where you have a population that you need to move out of harm's way. It doesn't fit the narrative of the way that this war has been executed against Hamas, who built for 15 years, built themselves underneath every civilian structure in Gaza, every hospital, every school. And for some reason, all the efforts that the IDF took to minimize civilian casualties, evacuating cities, doing localized evacuations, conducting every step. Nobody wants to they only want to look at the results. They want to look at the images of destruction. They want to do some type of quantitative justification of combatant to civilian ratio, which is, again, not how it works, with irrelevant of the actions of Hamas or the challenges that the IDF have faced in this war of self-defense to eradicate Hamas.
Look, I spent a lot of time in Israel and then in Gaza as well. War is a messy business, as you well know. I think about these pictures. They're not much different than what we saw in Mosul, Iraq. Some of the pictures in Syria as well, in terms of how things have happened. The Israelis do hold themselves to a different standard. You point out they never get credit for it. What I think is interesting also is the vast double standard between what Israel is held to and what Hamas is held to, specifically when it comes to this conversation about quote-unquote war crimes that Israel is always accused of. Unquestionably, using a hospital as an operations base, as Hamas did in Al-Shifa Hospital, is a war crime. There's no two ways about it. Yet Israel went into Al-Shifa Hospital. They could have bombed it. They didn't. They fought. They beat Hamas militants there. And then they brought in CNN journalists. Take a listen to some of the coverage.
We did not see any combatants, even wounded combatants, coming into Shifa Hospital. So, all of this is as a result of a conscious decision to destroy what's left of the health system in Gaza.
Is there any way for the Israelis to get a fair shake? And if there's not, isn't it kind of astounding that they continue to play by the rules as if they will?
No, I don't think it's outstanding they're following the rules, because that's what a moral, law-abiding force like the United States, like I did in urban combat, like the IDF do. So they're going to follow the irrelevant of what the world says, even about the Al-Shifa Hospital, whereas if people want to play games with numbers, 200 Hamas terrorists dead, 0 civilians. Yes, there are lots of damage that occurred because Hamas was using the hospital as a shield, using the patients as a shield, and the IDF still found a way. So I can't help the outside world's ignorance to what war looks like, or just refusal to take the IDF. We've come to the point where it doesn't matter what the IDF says, but if anybody, Hamas or anybody affiliated with Hamas says something, that's the ground truth.
All right. John, we really appreciate your time. Thank you. Incredible work, both in the study of urban warfare and urban combat, and then your willingness to speak frankly about it is really important. We appreciate it. It's good to see you.
Thanks, Leland.
Now here's one for you. Fat people should no longer be called obese. Allegedly, the move would make everyone feel better. But will it actually make people healthier?
Studies out today that draw the same disturbing conclusion. Americans are not winning their battle against obesity. One study found that obesity rates for adults actually rose in 28 states this year.
Hard to imagine that was 14 years ago. And still, obesity keeps getting worse in America, except now you can't talk about it the same way. Don't say obese. America's changing language around weight, writes Axios. Now people have obesity as if it's an outside disease, like having cancer. If you have whiplash, so do we. Just a few years ago, fat was fabulous, and telling people to lose weight was body shaming. Dr. Gail Saltz, psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, clinical associate professor of psychiatry, New York Presbyterian, is with us now. Doctor, it's good to see you. I understand the idea of not sort of shaming people or making them feel bad. You don't ever want to embarrass anybody. That said, is there any evidence that how we talk about this and changing the way we talk about it makes people healthier?
Yes. And the evidence really, it started earlier with psychiatry, with my field. And that is, for example, we found that saying somebody is an addict as opposed to has an addiction stigmatized them. And for example, in the opioid epidemic, we found that those people that you called an addict and made them feel shamed for it, which it went along with, caused them to not seek care, to feel terrible about themselves. And we know that people who become depressed and feel bad about themselves do more poorly in terms of health, and they don't seek health care. So I think extrapolating, basically, we're saying that a name that you call someone that has a pejorative sense to it, right, that is stigmatizing, is going to make them feel badly about themselves. It's going to make them feel perhaps depressed, wish to hide, not wish to go seek a doctor or health care. And that's not good for their health.
Okay, I guess the flip side to that would be when you destigmatize something, it becomes more acceptable. doubling the number of kids who have anxiety. We decided to destigmatize kids having anxiety. Everybody was invited to feel however they wanted to feel. And you doubled that. You talked about addiction. The opioid epidemic is worse than ever now. There is no more stigma about it. And the obesity rate in America is up from 19.7%, up from 30%, I should say, a couple of years ago to 41% now of Americans. So is destigmatizing everything really helpful?
Well, what you're talking about are not cause and effect. You're talking about correlations. So, yes, it's a period in time.
How do we know that, though?
Because no one's been able to show the cause and effect. We can show, however, that the name calling does have an effect. What causes the rise in obesity isn't lack of shame. Let's put it that way. Shame was not controlling obesity. Obesity, we've discovered, is a medical illness, and really informing people that if they have a very high weight, a medically unhealthy amount of fat, if you want to put it that way, that it causes things like diabetes and heart disease and other real problems in health. And that is the way that we are going to message to people that it is not worth it, let's say, that it's important to get the health care so that you don't suffer the health consequences of being clinically obese. And changing language to destigmatize helps people to be able to come out and talk with their doctor about it or seek out the kind of care.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And also allows people to not perhaps just sort of give up hope in a way. Doctor, it's always good to see you. Thank you. We always appreciate your perspective. It makes us think about things. Thank you. It's good to see you. One thing that we hope to do on this show is have you think about things. We do that every day, not only on the program, but War Notes, our daily newsletter, comes out at 4 p.m. Eastern every day. So subscribe for free at warnotes.com. Here's Chris.